Well, hi, everybody. And today on Beyond Possible Club podcast, we will be talking about ice water swimming, cold water swimming, ultramarathon swimming, because the guest that joins me today is Tom Heyerdahl. Hi, Tom.
Aye.
I will do a very quick introduction of what I know, that you're the third man in Canada to swim an ice mile. You're the eighth oldest male in the world for the ice mile. Correct? Yeah,
I
correct
think
me.
I've slipped to nine, but yeah, okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I should have corrected that. Yeah.
But I think that you're in your early 60s, and you said like the oldest is like 66 or something. So
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And I've given him warning that I'm going to try to beat him. So, and he's encouraged me to.
So Tom, before I will ask you to tell us a little bit more about your swimming career resume and where you're right now. And but before that, I have to tell you that you're the big reason why this podcast even exists. I was thinking about it. Yeah, I know it's a surprise. You didn't know this was I was going to mention it. But in March last year, I ran into you at the Britannia parking lot like by chance, and we started
I
chatting.
remember. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just became like a media darling when you know, started getting the attention of the media, being interviewed by radio stations and TV stations. And actually, for anybody who wants to get to know more about you, they can just Google ice swimmer Tom, and there's like CBC articles, Ottawa Citizen,
Yeah.
CTV, beautiful coverage, beautiful pictures, beautiful video of the ice swimming lane you have in Ottawa River. But when we talked in March last year, I walked away so energized, so interested in your story, and you're like affected by your energy. And I just thought, I want to do a podcast and talk to people like you more. And I wrote in my diary, I have a proof. And I couldn't interview you in just months ago when I was starting up. You're guest number four. You couldn't be number one or number two because you were away in Italy at the international championship, at the world championship for cold water swimming. So now over to you. Tell us more about who is
Well, yeah,
Tom.
I'm embarrassed by all that, by the way, but
That's good.
it's just happened, like much of my journey, it's just happened, and I know people are encouraged by it, and that means a lot to me, and I'm encouraged by others, and um, so yeah, to roll back the clock. Um, and you were mentioning that a little bit of a theme is people maybe encountering a roadblock or a bit of a block in their lives, and how so, and that very much is my story. That 9 years ago I lost my wife to cancer, and I had cared for her through. I was her caregiver in her last year, and if anyone's ever experienced that and also experienced the loss of somebody very close to them, I was married to Martha for 25 years, and she was a fabulous person, and we raised our child together. And it's just so I found myself after the 2 months of things you do when somebody passes, where your time is occupied with doing all the legal things you need to get done. And then it was like, um, and I had my mental health struggles, and I thought, well, and at the time I was 40 pounds heavier than I am now, and I'm not a lightweight now either, but I was even bigger, and I just thought this could go very bad. I could just sit in this dark room and be very stuck for a very long period of time, and I certainly didn't feel like going forward at all. And I think it's important to distinguish between depression and grieving, and I was definitely grieving. But so, and I was trying to avoid going into a deep depression, and it came down to part of it was I had trouble putting on my shoes. Like I didn't. I literally could not put on my shoes in the morning. That was like a problem. And I would walk outside in my sock feet or bare feet. My neighbors would laugh to put out the garbage or get the mail or whatever. But it's like, so I just said, I have to put on my shoes. So that's what I did. And then it was like, if my shoes are on, I may as well walk for 10 minutes. And that was the thing that slowly, and this is a repeated theme for me, is if you start small and you stay consistent, and then you build. And it's such, and for me, consistent means daily. It's like, and if people can't do that, if it's every second day or even once a week, that's great. But staying consistent is so vital. And for myself, I have found daily has been very helpful as being like the standard. And so I was walking every day, and it slowly built. And it wasn't too long. I think 3 or 4 months, I was up to 5 kilometers a day, and then it became 8 kilometers a day, over the 10,000 steps or whatever. And I started losing weight, which was great. And then uh, after, I don't know, 7, 8 months of that, it was I was getting bored with doing it alone, and I found a meetup walking group, Cattle City Walkers, and we started in Ottawa here, and we started. I was walking with these people, and there were a few people that liked walking faster, and so I was walking faster with those people, and I actually built it up to about 8 kilometers an hour, so a real sort of race walk, speed walk sort of thing, and then by the end of that year, so within 2 years, I was able to walk 21 kilometers in a day every day, pretty much, and it wasn't a big deal, like 3.5 hours. Yeah, I mean, but that's what starting small, staying consistent, and building can do, and I didn't have. It's important to state too, for all that I've done, I don't have other things holding me back or that I need to focus on in my life. My child is grown, and I don't have a relationship that takes up a lot of my time or anything. So, and also I'm on disability, so I don't have to worry about working. So I'm fortunate that way. And my chief job is to keep my mental health balanced, and I found this activity. I hadn't done a lot of it up to this point, and that activity was really important for me for staying balanced, and the more physically fit I got, it was just it was a very helpful thing. Um,
So from not being able to put on your shoes to walking 20 something kilometers a day every day.
yeah,
That's your first,
yeah.
kind of
Personal adventure within like a year and a
little
half or so.
adventure
Yeah,
moving, but it's like you needed to move forward and you literally
yeah.
moved forward.
Literally move
You
forward. Yeah.
moved forward by moving forward.
Yeah, and in those early months, I was so as some people who have suffered loss and trauma would know that you're not necessarily taking in your environment, and I was numb. Is the best way to describe it. And I'd be walking along these beautiful falls that we have here, Hogsback Falls, and so on, and I would just go, "Oh, yeah, I guess that's pretty or beautiful," and I would take a picture, and it was just like. But I wasn't able to really take it in. It's
You
like, oh
really
yeah, that's
feel it.
attractive. Huh?
Yeah. You
I
kind of
didn't
you,
really feel it. I
you
was
didn't
like, oh
really feel
yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, so empirically that must be pretty. And so I was doing a lot of that. I don't think I told you this before, Julia, but so I was doing that, and and oh look, there's a great blue heron. Okay, click. Oh look, there's I forget, like a fisher. It's an animal, and it's like, okay, it's like a huge weasel. And, and then after a year, I look back at all these photos, and it was like, wow, I was exposing myself to beauty and nature, and I wasn't able to take it in at an emotional level, but that it really showed that just as long as you still expose yourself to it, it had an effect, and it was healing, and it was helpful. And the same thing with contact with people. At first, I didn't really feel like a lot of contact with people.
Yeah.
But then
So
I
we
then
have community, like so far, I'm taking notes. It's
yeah,
consistency and community so far that
yeah, yeah,
got you out in the world. And then
Yeah.
how do you go from walking to ice water swimming? What exactly happened?
Okay,
Did
so
you
there was
fall
this little
into the river?
intermediate stage of, because I sort of injured my ankle by walking 21 kilometers a day for a month, back in September of 2017. I took a few months for it to heal, and then I thought, well, as a kid, I was not a swimmer. I was not a competitive swimmer. I learned how not to drown in four strokes, is the way I put it. Take all the Red Cross stuff so you don't drown. But I was not, and I enjoyed water, spent a lot of time in water, but I was not, like what we would call a competitive swimmer. Um, but I thought, gee, if all this walking is hard on my ankle, maybe if I swim a little, it'd be good. And oh look, there's some stationary bikes at our rec center. So I was scared. I was still heavy. I didn't want to be on a regular bike. But I thought a spin bike, okay, I can do that, a stationary bike. So I was doing that about 5 times a day. No, sorry, 5 times a week. And I was also doing, associated with that at the same place, I was doing 500 meters of swimming, and it would be like breaststroke, or it would be side stroke. I couldn't swim 25 meters without gasping for air as doing the freestyle, the
And
crawl.
that's 2017, right?
That was the actually beginning of 2018,
Okay.
exactly January 2018. And within that first week, I ran into a lady there just outside the spin bikes, and she said, "Well, you're training for a triathlon." And I'm like, maybe? I don't know. Like, and I thought at the time, like you've done Ironman. I thought that was all you could do as triathlon. I thought that's pretty ambitious. It would take me like 18 hours or something. And I thought, no, I can't do that. But she's like, no, you can do a sprint. It'll take you about 2 hours. And it's like, okay. So she said, I bet you if you come and see me every Saturday and we work this little group on Saturday, you could do a sprint triathlon uh, in March, I think it was May, no, May, June. So it was May. And it's like in 4 months, okay, sure, fine. And yeah, I did it. And I wasn't even really running at the time. I just did my race walk. And the first one was in a pool, but then the second one was, I bought this kayak wetsuit, which is not the right wetsuit. It doesn't let you straighten your arm. And anyway, so I was in open water in a kayak wetsuit and doing 500 meters. And yeah, those are the distances: 500-meter swim, 20-kilometer bike ride, and a 5-kilometer walk or run. And but I ended up doing 18 of those uh, in the next 2 years, and four Olympic distance, which is 1,500-meter swim, just under a mile, and 40-kilometer bike ride and a 10-kilometer run. And so by then I was running. And so yeah, that was sort of that. So
That's
you
the
can tell
story
I
of you
sort of go into
becoming an
things.
accidental triathlete.
Yeah. So I was doing one every weekend, It was like it was a lot of fun. And it's so yeah, so that was 2018, 2019. And at the end of 2018, I was hiking. I did this 20-kilometer hike or something. And in this wonderful park we have, it was late October. It was cold. It was wet. After 6 hours or whatever it was, I was ready to get in my car. I'm in the parking lot and I hear this laughter. And it doesn't sound that far away. And it's just down in a lake called Meech Lake. I found out later it was like 10 degrees in the water. But I was just about to get in my car and go home and get some tea, and I thought, I gotta check this out.
You
Yeah,
followed your curiosity.
yeah, and joy. I followed joy, and I heard joy, and then so it's like, and in a way, that's how I started with the walking to everything. It's just like, I don't know. Let's. This seems interesting. This seems joyful. Let's go. And but this was the purest expression I had ever heard. And I went down, and there were these four ladies in just ordinary swimsuits and laughing and having a great time. And they said, join us, join us. And I'm like, my wetsuit's kind of home. And they just laughed at me and said, you don't need a wetsuit. And it's like, okay. And, but I didn't join them until I saw them on Facebook. And the next week I did. And then the week after that, I did. And then this woman, Nadine, her name's Nadine Bennett, and she texted me and said, would you support my attempt at Meech Lake at 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday? And I'm like, sure.
And how long
Yeah.
was she swimming? What was the distance?
Well, I don't know. She just said, will you support my attempt
Okay.
and bring your phone, make sure it's fully charged. And, when it's -10 wind chill or whatever, -15 wind chill, your phone might not hold its charge very well, and you're not responsible for the video, but just in case the other person's doesn't work, would you do this? And I'm like, sure. But then I said, yeah, what are you attempting? you know? And she sends me all this information on an ice mile. And what that is swimming more than 1,610 meters in below 5-degree water. And so uh, I went and I saw her do it, and she actually swam 1,900 and something meters just to be sure she got it. And I think it was 4.3 degrees or something. I could look it up, but she became the first woman in Canada to ever swim an ice mile, and only the second person. There was only one man who had done it before, and it was something like 7 years earlier. And so first of all, I didn't know that could be done, and watching her do it was phenomenal. And when she came out, she was very, very cold, and people cared for her and rewarmed her. And then the amazing part is she did it the next weekend, I think in Lake Ontario, and then she did another one near us the next week. So not only did she do this amazing thing, but she did one every weekend for 3 weekends. And but it got me thinking, oh, there's no second man in Canada. There's no third man in Canada. Like I can barely swim still. I'm still swimming in a wetsuit most of the time. And that's the thing. You can't do this in a wetsuit. It's just cap, goggles, you're allowed earplugs and an ordinary bathing suit. And there's restrictions. You can't have one that, covers your knees as a guy. You can't have one that covers your shoulders if you're a woman,
Yeah,
and so on.
and I
So
just want
it's
to check on
it's
the temperature. So I
yeah,
even took some notes that
yeah.
the ice, what is the temperature for it to be considered ice mile?
Yeah. So there's different organizations, but the one that I sort of follow is the International Ice Swimmers Association, or ISA, and their definition of it is below 5 degrees water temperature
So,
is
and I think that
considered
I
ice.
look it up. So 5 Celsius, so it's 41 Fahrenheit, just for,
Okay.
I,
That's not the language I speak, but yeah, okay.
that's not the language I speak, but we might have
For those that
people from
aren't
other
Canadian.
countries.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, your temperature of your fridge is roughly 5 degrees. So if you just, if without putting ice in water, you put a glass of water in the fridge, it'll eventually become roughly, 3 to 5 degrees. So yeah, it's quite cold. Most cold tap water isn't that cold.
Yeah,
So a cold shower doesn't even get down to that. So
yeah.
yeah, it's very cold, and people have trouble getting their heads around it because they think of air temperature, but water pulls because it's 25 more times more dense than air. That's the rate at which it pulls heat out of your body is 25 times faster than air. So whatever you
That's an
can
interesting
tolerate,
fact.
yeah, whatever you can tolerate in air, you divide by 25, and that's roughly how long you could tolerate the cold
Mm.
water. So same temperature. So yeah, anyway, it's so there's that. So it took me 4 years, but I did become a strong enough swimmer that in 2022 I became the third man in Canada to swim an ice mile. And as luck would have it, this is the thing, like here we have to wait for the temperature to get down to that. But here in Ottawa, the temperature very quickly, like you only get one weekend basically, because by the next weekend it's too cold. So it goes from, oh, it's 5.7 degrees or it's 6.1 degrees. So it doesn't count. You can do a qualifier in that temperature, but you can't do an actual ice mile. And then suddenly you got the one weekend, and who knows what that exact temperature is. And then by the next weekend, it's below 2 degrees and you can't do it. So it's like,
The problem, I'm laughing, the problems that ice swimmers have.
yeah, it's too warm. It's 6 degrees.
It's like
So
a
anyway,
Goldilocks, like it's like too
yeah,
cold,
yeah.
too hot.
Well, and it's a whole thing because I can't do it without support. You got to have at least three people watching you by the regulations, an observer, a witness, and what's called a second. Oh yeah, and second is like responsible for dressing you and undressing you and making sure you survive it. There's also a medical officer. So you've got to have those. But I have found it makes sense to have a videographer and a photographer that's all they do. And also, yeah, so and then also
So
I'm
it
usually
sounds to me like it's this not a team sport, but it's totally a team sport. You need quite a bit
it's
of,
absolutely a team sport. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, and this is true for ultra marathon swimming. But yeah, anytime. Yeah, it seems like an individual sport because you've got to train to be able to do it individually, and no one else can do it for you. But you can't do it without everyone else because
Yeah.
it
So
pushes the limits of what's possible.
yeah, you
So
need that
it's
for safety and support. So
yeah,
Tom, like 4 years. So what kept you going? Like what is it about? Because obviously what gets people started is often not what gets people going because it's like there
yeah,
was serendipity, there was some sort of curiosity, there was like what if, you know, but to keep going for 4 years, well, more than four
yeah,
years by now, like
yeah,
what
yeah.
was it?
Well, I don't know. Certainly, 2019 was still doing a lot of triathlons, but I was also friends with Nadine and her friends, and there was that. And the big thing, I think, Julia, that changed everything was 2020. So the pandemic and what happened, and I did develop in early 2020 and late 2019 as I was doing more ice swimming and more intense. And in 2020, I went down for an ice swimming competition where we raced doing 100 meters. And I wasn't able to do that. I started too fast and I ran out of air. But I did 50 meters and so on. Um, and that was in 0 degrees, so much harder, 0 degree water. Um, but so there was that. But so in as soon as the pandemic hit, uh, and it was actually as it started to lift, and we were allowed back into the parks, and as long as you stayed 6 feet apart and so on, that sort of thing. And so again, Nadine said, "Would you meet me at 4 o'clock in the morning to go for a swim?" And I'm like, "Sure." And it's just like there are some people uh, that are inspiring, and Nadine's just one of those people, and she has a knack for lifting other people's boat. Like I use the illustration that they say the rising tide lifts all boats, and she's just that kind of person. She manages to encourage everyone around her to get together and to group together and to push their limits. And also it's just fun. It's they're fun people. So and so there was that, and so 4 o'clock in the morning, you got lights on your bag and lights on your wrist, and so you can see where the other person is. And we did it in a very safe. You're familiar with the bay, Julia, that it's only about 75 meters wide from one side of the rocks to the other, and it's fairly shallow where you can stand up if you're in trouble. And and it's only, I'm thinking, maybe 30 meters from the one edge to the beginning of the mouth of the bay. So even though it's open water swimming and it's in the dark and it's very safe, it was very, and that's one thing I learned from Nadine is when you up the um the risks, you've got to also up your safety measures. And it's like, so yeah, you can do things that sound really on the edge of what's safe, but no, you've increased your safety. And so anyway, so there we were 4 o'clock in the morning and we swim every morning. And then until we were told by the police that park doesn't open till 5. And we're like, okay.
Again,
So we just,
another problem, that,
yeah.
the cold water swimmers encounter. No 4 a.m. swimming.
So this was, excuse me, this was probably in April. So it was still cold in the water. It's guessing it started at about 6 degrees. And that, but it was warming. And so April, May, and then it starts getting around 13 degrees or so, and it's just balmy, right? But and then it's also you get to know, well, it's a little bit warmer, so I can go a little bit further. I can spend more. You get very familiar with how many minutes you can stay in based on how cold it is, or um, and to be honest, when I started there in that bay, I'd swim from one side of the rocks to the other, 75 meters, and I'd put my feet down. And then I'd go repeat. And that was sort of my limit. And then to need to puff and pant and get my air. I do have asthma, by the way. So then
Just a side
the
note.
yeah, a side note. But I say that too because there's many people that say I have asthma, I can't do sports. I have asthma, I can't, And I have found that as long as I'm consistent with my medication that my respirologist gives me, and also I've been consistent again, start small, stay consistent and build. Um, uh, yeah, he now asks me, how do I swim more than how do I take my 50 meters and turn it into 500 meters? How are you swimming, 25 kilometers without stopping? So it's like, yeah, and so yeah, I now give my respirologist advice on swimming distance. So anyway, I got lost there. So so
From
swimming in the
4 a.m.
dark
to 5 a.m.
every day, yeah, and then 5 a.m. So and we did it every single day throughout the summer. And also what would happen is we were some people would try with us in the dark and then they'd say, no, I'll see you once the sun rises. And so they come at 6 or they come at 7 or it's a little warmer at 8 or 9 o'clock. So, but Nadine and I would just keep swimming and Nadine would do her 5K or more and I'd do my 2K or 3K, all in fairly shallow water. And, but then we did that throughout the summer. And also, we would just keep swimming while other people came. So we would build swims on top of each other. So we could be there for 3 hours or more. And then uh, that lasted, I think, 188 days. So from
It
from
was like a
early
streak,
April
like
in a
consistent.
streak. Yeah, there was maybe 1 or 2 days we'd miss here and there due to illness or tiredness or whatever, but generally it was 188 days in a row. And from April through to I think it was October or early November, something like that. And it was just yeah, I miss only 2 days a month maybe. And then um I said to her, "Why are we doing this?" I waited
So
several
say,
months.
so basically say yes, ask questions later.
Exactly. It hasn't failed me yet. I think you got to pick the person you decide that approach with carefully. I
You
don't know.
just trusted the energies. Like if this person,
Yeah,
I want to be around her. If
yeah,
she says I have to be in the water at 4 a.m., I'll do it.
yeah, yeah. And she'd tell me these other crazy things she did, like she swam 25 kilometers without stopping. Well, every half an hour you take some carbonated or not carbohydrate drink,
Mhm.
for calories. But just oh really? You swam 25 kilometers? Okay. Um, And then she told me too, I'm planning this 40-kilometer swim, means I've got to start in the dark. And I wasn't too keen about swimming in the dark before. And she said, but now it's not a problem. And that just blew my mind. Oh, that's what we were doing. We were facing her fear and conquering it. And that's another thing, you know, as you run away from a fear, it gets larger. If you face the fear, it gets smaller. And I just went, that's wild, you know. And we would swim in high waves. It's called the windsurfer beach because it is a very windy spot. And you know that the waves can be like 3, 4 feet high sometimes, and white
Yeah, because
caps. And
it's a river. It's a
yeah,
Ottawa River, and
yeah,
yeah, typically it's not like sea or ocean in terms of waves,
no,
but it gets
no,
so windy sometimes in that particular spot that
yeah,
it does feel like you're swimming away from a shipwreck, you know.
yeah. And
And we
and
were
and
there like now it's February. We were there just last Friday when I was
okay, yeah,
helping out with cutting ice to open it up. And it was so windy that I felt like I was training for an Arctic expedition. And there was windsurfers there on their skis or boards or
yeah,
whatever they're
yeah,
using in
snowboards,
the
yeah,
winter. I've seen them in the summer, but I haven't seen them close like this in the winter, that they're
yeah,
there. The wind is so crazy. So, and I think that that's something I learned from you too, that yes, there is a temperature of the water, but then there is also a limitation of what type of wind you can
yeah,
sustain,
yeah.
swimming. Yeah.
Yeah, and literally the wind will pick you up off the ice when it's over 50 kilometers an hour. So I generally try to keep it, you know, below my 40-kilometer an hour winds. And also, to be honest, anything over 30-kilometer an hour is, depending upon the temperature, which it can be below -20. Yeah, you start going, I'm gonna draw the line. But I mean, it's based on experience. But what all that gives you, swimming in waves, swimming in dark, swimming long, swimming in cold, is that it just becomes swimming. And
Yeah, it
and you get to
normalizes. Your brain
it
does not,
normalizes everything.
there
Yeah,
is
and
nothing, no freak out, because
yeah,
I have very limited experience with just ice water, like dipping, not
yeah,
swimming.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and that started years ago with a cold shower. And I remember the panic the brain was in. Like just to turn on the
Mm,
ice cold shower, it was like,
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
die.
yeah,
And or going outside, like I was doing snow angels in my bikini in
yeah,
the
yeah,
backyard. At first, it's like it was very strange. After that, after a while, like the brain is like, okay, she did it before, she didn't die, she's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. Yeah, that's called the cold water response, and the body, especially below 10 degrees, but definitely below 5 degrees water, your arms come in like this. You cannot control it. It's your brain stem, and you do an intake of air where you go, and because of that, that's why you don't jump in ice water. You don't dive into ice water. Kayakers got to be in a dry suit for when they flip, because otherwise they just
Mhm.
do that and then they instantly aspirate water into their lungs. So there's risks. And again, you learn that. So you learn to slip into the water. You learn to give it time for your air to be and calm that down, calm your breath down. And now I'm into racing in ice water. It's like you've got they generously give you 5 seconds to adjust your breath. So you know it's like remove your clothing, get in the water, uh, on your mark, and you touch the backboard, and
Mhm.
then buzz, and away you go. And you're still going a little bit, and I've managed to calm what you were talking about there too. I've been able to calm my cold water response, so it's not as severe. But again, when your face is in the water and your armpits are open, that water is hitting you in the
Yeah.
armpits,
So I
and you've
actually,
got bare hands and bare feet. All of that, it's like it makes it more difficult to regulate your breath, and also you're trying to swim fast, you know. So it's all that. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
lot to regulate.
I want to share a story just for you, but it's also for
Yeah,
listeners
yeah,
to just kind of like
yeah.
to have a comparison, because I one my last half Ironman distance that I did was in Indian Wells, La Quinta, and in California, but it was in December. The water was very cold in the reservoir, like it's like a water reservoir that they have where the swim is, and it was 13 degrees Celsius. So by triathlon standards, it's
Yeah.
really cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had I had booties on, I had Vaseline on my face to protect. I had like thermal cap, I had the thermal band. I'm comfortable in cold water. Plus I had all this stuff, like the booties, the Vaseline to protect my skin, to the thermal cap. And I was mentally prepared. I knew what is going to be happening to me when I'm going to that water. And but it was the most chaotic swim I've ever seen on a triathlon. People were freaking out. They're swimming on their back. It was
Mm,
insane. And typically there is just maybe a couple people, like one, two, three, I don't know the exact number, that don't meet the cutoff for the how long you take to
yeah.
finish the swim to go into the bike. That time, it was a full bus load, like a school bus load of people that they took to back to the transition because they didn't finish the swim on
No.
time because
No.
people
Yeah.
had no idea how
Yeah.
to swim, and that was 13 degrees, and and we obviously had wetsuits, so it's really takes a lot of preparation to be able to know what to do in even 13 degrees
Hmm.
Celsius.
Hmm.
And I think that it's 10 degrees, and I'm looking at my notes and trying to, so that the qualifier for the English Channel temperature is considered less than 10 degrees.
16.
Oh, is it 16? Really? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
16 for the English. Yeah,
Oh, below 60. Oh, that's right. Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah. So this
that's
is
okay.
61. Cold water is a 10 less than 10 degrees.
Correct. Yeah, yeah, the cold water definition. Yeah,
So
is
that's
below 10.
61 Fahrenheit. That's 16 degrees. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So that falls into that. Yeah,
yeah,
so obviously it takes time. And when I see you swim right now in the ice water,
yeah.
you don't have thermal cap, you have a regular swim cap, and you have no booties.
No, no.
So like
Yeah.
it took like how do you toes? It's just like your body adjusts, you adapt.
Yeah, I think so. I largely the body adapts. It also there is this thing. I think a lot of people focus on this, and it's not fair to swimmers that it's just a matter of body fat. It does help to have body fat. Also, you do this a lot. The body decides to create more brown fat rather than white
Okay.
fat. So and it's to protect the organs. So there's been some studies done that brown fat is beneficial and
Mhm.
will actually you can burn white fat with brown fat. And also recently there's like, well, maybe brown fat isn't as great as we thought, but it's still thought to be the better of the two. Um, but also, yeah, various things like general body mass makes a difference. Like people that just weigh less, regardless of their body makeup, they've got less place for the cold to go, right? So there's that. You do produce some heat while you're swimming, but like I look at like you're just giving it away. Like you may be moving your muscles may create a little bit of warmth for yourself, but it gets stripped away pretty quickly. So it's more a factor of yeah, being adapted to be able to handle being in that temperature. So also what happens is your muscles do tighten up. So first of all, when you first get in, that first 30 seconds to 60 seconds is handling that cold water response and slowing your breathing down, slowing your blood, because the water or sorry, the temperature triggers your body to restrict blood flow to your arms and legs and head even. And what that does is increase blood pressure, but it also is creating more blood flow around your heart because
Mhm.
the body somehow knows the heart is
Yeah.
the important thing. And then, so, but what that happens is your arms and legs get cold and your muscles get less efficient. They tend to get tighter. To handle the first minute, you've got to practice relaxing and breathing. And the same thing happens while you're swimming, that you tend to tighten up, your neck tightens up, your jaw tightens up. You've got to stay loose. And that's actively what I'm doing when I'm swimming a long distance or swimming an ice mile. I'm trying to reach out as much as possible. And I'm constantly thinking about my technique because the technique falls apart. But as the technique falls apart, you get slower and
Mm,
then you don't make your objective. So it's like, and so oddly enough, I like the challenge of having something difficult and then having to focus on the basics again of having a good, what we call a good catch, that you're grabbing lots of water at the front of the stroke and that you're moving it all the way through and that you're finishing the stroke and that you're rotating and all that stuff. And that you're not lifting your head up, that you're keeping one goggle out when you go to breathe and so on, all that stuff.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
so
but
so we kind of focused on the physical side of it.
yeah, sorry.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, but I really want to ask you about what difference did it make in your mental?
Yeah. Well, I've got a very active mind, and maybe some of that is my mental health. And we could go into my mental health if you want, but the yeah, I tend to have a sort of very active and manic tendency to my mind, and I find that when I swim distance in warm water or when I'm swimming what I swim in ice water, that yeah, you have to sort of focus on the task at hand. And so my mind is not swirling about like, I was going through caring for my mom who had Alzheimer's and she was in her 90s and she was also a difficult person. And so there was a whole lot going on. And I found when I still managed to carve out that half an hour to get in the water, and I would just, that stuff would just go into the water. And I would come out without that on my mind, and then I'd get the phone call. But it's
So it's like
like,
you see it like a reset. Like it's almost like
yes, exactly. And that's what we call it. It's like a mental reset and a physical reset. And when your
mm,
body goes through getting that cold and then it's got to warm up, and then we haven't talked about that, there's like a good easily an hour where you're somewhere between 30 minutes an hour where you're shivering and your body is warming itself up, recruiting muscles
mm,
involuntarily to warm you up again. And it's either little muscles or bigger muscles, and even your legs can go, or I've very few times it's recruited my core, and I've done involuntary crunches for 40 minutes or whatever. And you want that to happen. If that's not
mm,
happening, then you need medical care to warm yourself. But anyway, so but yeah, that whole process, it's sort of like a rebirth. It really is each and every time. And and then I have a nice long nap. So it takes me a full 3 hours, depending how long I'm in the water, it takes me a full 3 hours to be sort of for I've had some people say, oh, well, I tried this once and 3 hours later my feet were still cold. And I'm like, yeah, that's that's normal. And people sort of want to do hot showers or something. Those are not recommended because this thing of the blood pressure I was describing, once you trigger what's called the after drop, where the cold blood from your arms and legs returns to your heart, that's when you start shivering. But if you speed that up, number one, you're increasing the drop in blood pressure. And if you're in a shower, you can pass out and hit your head in the tub.
mm.
It's not the hot water that can harm you, it's banging your head. So I've been to an event where the people that are caring for people rewarming, they'll, you see them literally standing there leaning towards the showers like this, listening for the thumps, So it's like
Wow.
it's an actual thing. So I encourage people if they want to do a lukewarm bathtub, sure, go ahead, but try to avoid the warm showers. Now, if you're more than an hour in, the after drop has happened, and you're still you're just crabby because you're cold, then yeah, that's different. Go ahead. But anyway, but yes, mentally, and your brain, when you get out of the water, you're no longer that cold, and you got about 10 minutes where you feel just great and your skin tingles, and you're not warm. You don't realize you're not warm, but it's so much better than being in the water. And then your brain is supplied with naturally produced serotonin and oxytocin and I think another one, but it's just so, yeah, it is a natural high. And um, I have found that my down cycle, as part of my my bipolar, I've been diagnosed with it, and I'm on medication for it, and I don't mess with that. We spent years getting that right. And but I have found my winter swims help with that negative cycle. And so I do have a medication I can take for depression. I don't need to take it during the winter anymore because I don't have it. I get down on the ice. Get out the ice saw. I'm with friends and we haul out chunks of ice. I think that's it too. It's the social, and also you got the wind blowing in your face. You feel alive, and it's beautiful out there. And you've seen that
It's
little ice
gorgeous.
lane I've
I
made for
have to say
myself.
that, I mean, obviously that's why I love a sport like triathlon. It gets me, in nature.
Yeah,
Obviously, it doesn't
yeah,
get me in nature as much, or not as beautiful nature in the
yeah,
winter living in
yeah,
Ottawa. So, and I'm training on my bike right now and running kind of like not in the great conditions. When I went that Friday with you guys to cut the ice, that was just, we didn't go in the water, but just being there in that wind, cutting ice, I just felt so alive.
yeah,
So alive. I think it's just the nature because we're on the river. It's this
yeah,
wind blowing, the sun. Oh, I just felt like so different, so
yeah,
different. And being with people and everybody, obviously, nobody who does this type of like nobody who does long distance triathlons or ice water swimming are negative, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
No,
shouldn't be. You're not gonna make it. So
yeah, yeah.
it's
And
like really positive attitude, really anything is possible, let's make it happen. So it's just it's contagious.
it is. It is. And I'm guilty of making a bit of a false dichotomy where I'll say, well, I could just sit in a dark room and eat cheesies in a recliner, or I could be swimming 25 kilometers or swimming in 0 degree water. Bit of a false dichotomy. There's a whole lot of activities in between those two extremes. But
Not really, maybe for other people, like let's say, like let's just name it. I came to conclusion that, yes, we all build very differently, like
yeah,
neurologically, right? We're
yeah,
wiring very different. And, there are people that just like, they don't have extremes, like
yeah.
was never diagnosed with bipolar. Maybe if you ask my ex-partner, maybe he would think I was, but
Armchair.
but
Yeah,
let's not ask him. And so, but it's intensity. Like I feel things very intensely. So yeah, I go from like doing the Ironman to, oh, I cannot brush my teeth. Brushing my teeth is really hard.
the way I describe it is things that are hard or deemed impossible to others are easy for me now.
Yeah. So
And
when for
things
me,
that are easy for others, I find very hard. And Julia, this has been a year for me where I've hired somebody to help me internalize what I've been doing externally. So
okay.
I've got it down now. I know how to, whether it's walking or triathlon or cold swimming or distance swimming, I know how to start small, stay
Mhm.
consistent, and build. And I went, I was going to use an expletive, but it's just,
That's okay.
gosh darn it. Why can't I do that with keeping my house tidy and,
Mm.
reclaiming space or using my space where, move my exercise material from my living room up into what used to be my wife's office. And why am I stuck? There you go
Mm.
again. Why am I stuck there? I can swim, for 25 kilometers. Why can't I? just
Why
stay
can't I wash
consistent.
dishes? Sometimes I ask
Yeah,
myself.
exactly. I'm pretty good with teeth brushing, but that took some practice too. And I went through phases too where very consistently was, making the bed. And there's a great thing on, make your bed. This Marine talks about the importance of making your bed. And no, those routines are really important. And routines are really that thing of starting small and staying consistent. And it is possible. And so I don't know if that's backwards, that some people start with organized lives and then they add on these more uh, um, exploratory activities in their outer
Yeah,
lives.
I
But
think I
I,
think
I'm doing it the other way around.
yeah, I believe that it's obviously it's all different. And also I find, there is this quote I keep quoting all the time. It's from I learned it from a book, but it's originally, I believe, from Gospel of Thomas, that when you bring forth what's within you, what you bring forth will save you. When you don't bring
Hmm.
forth what's within you, what you don't bring forth will destroy you. And I
Hmm.
find that certain activities, I think watching you, I think for you, it's definitely like, long distance, like marathon swimming, ice swimming. For me, it's on the triathlon, on the like ultra running, and on the Ironman side. When I don't do it, like as if I don't bring forth what's within me,
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
endurance and many other, like, and everything connects to everything else. It's like you make new connections, you
Yeah.
make new
Yeah.
friendships, it leads to new business opportunities for me. Like
Yeah.
it becomes
Yeah.
like who I am. And
Yeah.
when I don't do that, it destroys me to the point that I find like brushing my teeth becomes like, "Ugh, do I have to
Yeah.
do it?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I find that sometimes when people say, harder for me to accept the compliment, when people say, "Oh, you do Ironman," so I was like, they don't know. This is the easiest thing I do.
Yeah. 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 Well, and it's also you show up at an event and there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of support and there's cameras and there's this and there's that and there's, or like when I was doing half marathon runs and you see the ladies in the pink shirts who are breast cancer survivors cheering you.
Mhm.
Anyway,
It is a peak
so
experience for us.
yeah,
I mean, it
yeah,
won't be for everybody because
yeah,
sometimes people say, I don't think I can do it. And I
no,
always ask them, do you want to do it? And they're
yeah,
like, no. And I think that for people like you and I, it's not like that. It's just pulled us in. People say, what motivates you? Like, I don't know what motivates you. It just like pulls you in. You just cannot
yeah.
not do it. It's
Yeah, well, it's like not knowing, right? And like I didn't originally think I could run 5 kilometers, and I couldn't at that time. And it's like, but I just keeping at it and staying consistent, and then suddenly you're doing it, and then you're doing a 10K, and then you're doing 21K, and then, and my original intention was to do a half Ironman in 2021, and then I was signed up for 12 events in 2022, and or sorry, in 2020, and no, it became the summer of swimming. Oh, by the way, too, what happened then is I with the encouragement of my friends, I had in 2019 swum a 4K in a wetsuit, right? But then I did it without a wetsuit on July 1st, Canada Day, at this Meech Lake. We call it a beach to beach at Meech, where it's 4 kilometers apart. And I did it solo. I went right down the middle of the lake, but no one, it's now illegal, but and then you could do it. And then that just built. I think it was in August or September. I did a 5K on my own, swimming along the shore, and my buddy kept throwing me bottles of water to feed me, and then on a rope. And I was making this up as go along, and I knew that kayakers, marathon swimmers get supported by a kayak. Well, I had to train some kayak friends to how to do this, and I didn't really know. So okay, we'll go out and practice, and they'd throw me out this bottle on the rope, and I would drink it, and I'm like, okay, if I start going crooked, get ahead of me and block me, and this, which never happens, but it's like I was figuring this out. And then I did a 7K swim, being supported by a paddle board, a good a friend Amy who was I think the fourth person in fourth Canadian sorry, fourth woman to swim an ice mile, and seeing her, that was another component of my journey. And then yeah, she supported me on the 7K, and then I got somebody else, two people I think, to support me on the 10K swim. So what was it, September? Might have been September or October of 2020. I swam 10 kilometers, took me 6 hours, and I was taking like 3 minutes to float on my back and drink and so on. And I had started in 15-degree water and finished. It was just around 17 degrees by the time I finished. And I posted this, and I was proud because 10K is considered the marathon swim distance. It takes as long for both experts and non-experts to do a marathon swim as it does to do a marathon run. And so that's why those are equivalent. So 10K swim is equivalent to a 42K run.
Interesting.
Um, yeah. So yeah, beginners take 5 to 6 hours, and and yeah. Anyway,
So how is it now? Like, where are you now? Like, what distances are you swimming now?
yeah. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to tack on that. My friend Nadine then on Facebook goes, "Congratulations! Do you know what you did?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I became a marathon swimmer." She goes, "No, you just qualified for the English Channel." It's
Oh,
like,
that's in
yeah,
2020, right?
yeah, that was 2020, and so
Wow.
because it was the average temp was 16 degrees, and because I had been in the water for 6 hours, yeah, that's what you do to qualify for the English Channel. So I had no idea. It was by accident. So say, how do you get there? It wasn't.
Accidental triathlete. No, well, it all makes
Yeah,
sense. Accidental
yeah,
triathlete, accidentally qualified for,
the
for the
English
English
Channel.
Channel.
Yeah.
So are
And now,
you
of
gonna
course,
do
that
English
doesn't count
Channel?
anymore. You've got to do it every year. But yeah,
Okay.
so then so yeah, and then in between, while I was still caring for my mom and stuff, I had to restrict what I was doing a little bit. So I did do 12K. I was hoping to do a 16K swim, but no, I couldn't. And then I signed up. I forget which year I did this in. A couple of years ago, I signed up for the 10K at Kingdom Swim. So that's down in Newport, Vermont, and Lake Memphremagog. And they do various distances. They do everything from 1 mile
Mhm.
up to 16 miles, which is 25K. So I thought, okay, 10K. I know I've done a 10K. I can do it as a competition, hopefully not get cut because you have to get it done in like 5.5 hours or something. So I'm like, okay. Well, the lake got flooded, and they had an 8K lake, and I was going to do a doubles for 16K. And it terrified me. I'm like, I'm not so sure I can swim 16K in the allotted time. And I think it was 8 hours. I got it done 7.5 or 7:35. So I did it. And they had like 2 foot high waves coming through this gap of these mountains. And it was beautiful and it was terrifying. And on the way back, I got to ride the waves in and made really good time. And I beat a 27-year-old kid, and I felt really great about that. It's it's all individual. It's not about beating others, but it's nice when you do. Um, so yeah, and most of my expectations for all this stuff is not to be cut and not to be last. And it's not the end of the world to be last. It's about accomplishing it. Anyway, so last year I signed up for the 25K. So it's called the Border Buster, and you start in Newport, Vermont, you go up into Canada around Ile-Provence, and then you come back and you give your passport to your kayaker in case you get stopped and by US Border Patrol. And anyway, and it was oh, and I wasn't so sure I could do it. So I went and I practiced on a weekend down there. And they I did 19 and a half kilometers in, I think it was just over 10 hours. And I went, oh, well, maybe I can do 25, you know? So and so yeah, that's what I did. And then yeah, yeah, all this stuff, it's like I have no idea. And I had a friend just question what my goals are for the next 3 years and say, do you really think you can do this? And I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea. So I am now signed up for this summer to do 40 kilometers. And it will be from Newport, Vermont up to Magog, Quebec. And it's the length of the entire lake. And it's that swim that Nadine did and that she was training for in 2020. So again, I'm just blithely following Nadine. So
So
um,
the importance of a mentor is
huge,
to
huge.
not be like a role model,
Yeah, yeah,
mentor, somebody who is like naturally good at inspiring people, but also purposely, bring you in and
yeah, yeah.
bring you in to support her, obviously, but it's also like rubs off. Like, so, when parents, get concerned that the kids can hang out with the wrong crowd, they're
Mm. That's the way we've described it. I fell in with the wrong crowd.
you
Um,
fell into with the
where,
wrong crowd of a long distance.
where this sort of craziness is normal. And you know, the more we go down to, I go down to, and why do you pay big money to go down, American dollars to go down to, these things in Newport when you can do them in the Ottawa River? Well, because there's these incredible people there that are doing other things like the English Channel and the Catalina Channel and Manhattan. And I'll get to that. But it's like, it's crazy, and we go down for this winter swim at the end of February. It'll be taking place in 2 weeks. And we do these 200-meter and 150-meter swims in the ice. And it's not about the swims. I can do that in my own ice pool here at home. It's about you talk to these people. What did you do this year? What are you planning for next year? And if you don't already go with a goal for yourself, you walk out of there with a goal for yourself because it's the groundswell of these people and they're just so inspirational. And they're all, and there's these two sisters that I met them 5 years ago and they were, oh gosh, they were just teens then. And now one's 21 and the other is about to turn 18, I guess, but they swam 80 kilometers, so double what I'm planning. They went all the way up the length of the lake and came all the way back in one swim at the same time, which is hard too, because even two sisters that have trained together, they're not going to be exactly matched, right? So one's going to have to go a little slower for the other one. And but just incredible. And yeah, they're set up for a World Open Water Swimming Award for Accomplishment of the Year for that. And they're also on the short list for Female Swimmers of the Year. And so, and so in Italy, I bumped into one of them, the older sister Vera, and she's like, she's all excited. I'm like, what is it, Vera? She goes, I said, did you hear I'm planning to do the search for the lake monster, the 40K? And she goes, yeah, yeah. Uh, you know, if everything works out with my job, I'm going to be able to pilot your boat at least for 4 hour shifts at a time or something. I'm like, that is cool. And so it's just amazing that I draw inspiration from them. They draw inspiration from me, and it's just and everyone is like that, and I'm in my 60s. There are other 60 and 65-year-old and older men that I look to. I'm like, holy, you're faster than I am. But that's the thing too. Most of these swimmers have been competitive swimmers in their youth, and they're faster and they've got their technique down. And what they're fighting, if they're in their 60s, is just age, right? And that
Yeah.
slowly things are going to get a little slower. And um, I never had that. I'm building from nowhere. And but doing that every day has given me acceleration. And so like I look at some people who train for ice miles, and I think it's amazing they can do it training only 1 day a week. Um, I don't think I could do it if I wasn't doing every day or every second day. But it sure helps that they've got this history of, being, an hour or two a day as a kid in the pool, or, swimming varsity in university or whatever it is. So, um, but I don't have,
Yeah,
I,
and I
uh, yeah,
yeah, and I wonder if it's that because I identify with your story. I'm a late bloomer when it comes to sports too, so I feel
yeah,
sometimes like, well, I didn't do this competitive stuff in high school and in college like many people did, that so I didn't have that base of like discipline and that base of training and everything. So I identify with that. But it's interesting about like this everyday thing that there could be something else to it too, because it's meets that other need of feeling alive and being
mm,
consistent, right? Like, because I find that for me, it was very difficult when, like for some long distance triathlons and long distance, like ultra runs, like honestly, like because of my natural abilities in endurance, I can just do long runs or long training days and I will be fine. I'll finish,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But if I only
yeah,
do that, I feel kind of it doesn't keep my spirits up. I kind
right,
of get disconnected from I get disconnected from people. I get disconnected kind of from that identity or kind of like remembering
yeah,
how good it feels, because
yeah,
obviously it feels good, but at first it does not feel good at all. Like when you go
no,
into the cold water, like
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
describe, maybe like that will be a good maybe a place for you to describe. Like when you first go in, it does not feel good at all, right?
no, no. Like I said, the first 30 to 60 seconds is just one way is to describe it as a lot of input. Every cell in your body or every nerve is just going, this isn't good, get out. This is horrible. And I've described it as pain. It's not quite pain. It's just a lot of input, a lot of sensory input. And your body is trying to tell you to get out, that this isn't a good thing. But if you go beyond that, it numbs out and then everything calms down and you feel like, yeah, I can do this. And then you got to be sensible about how long you go. One of the things there are people that do ice challenges and cold challenges and stuff that really are sort of macho about it, or testosterone driven. And that's fine if that's what works for you. But I'm a little concerned about that because I am actually pushing limits. And if you're pushing limits, I don't think that that should be your driver. Like, I'm a Viking, it's like, no, like be more. And I've got
Mm.
some friends that go in and they scream. I think that's great. They have a lot of fun screaming, but it's like, as long as you're not drawing the police. But it's like, uh, I sort of feel badly in a way that I'm very methodical and I'm very businesslike about what I do. But it
Mm.
it has helped me build. It has helped me. And one of my mantras is, this is what I do.
This is
And so
so this is
when I'm,
something you tell yourself to kind of keep
yeah,
you going
yeah,
when your brain is like, this is wrong, this is not
yeah,
what you do. You're like,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
what I
This
do.
is what I do. Here, let's go. And it's like, and as you say, it is connected to identity too, and just, recently now well, it was just by happenstance with like I'm embarrassed about the media circus last year, but it's been good. It's drawn attention to the sport and it's made more people want to dip and dip safely. More people want to ice swim and swim safely. I think all of this has been helpful for raising, there were 8 Canadians that went to ice swimming worlds when there was only one 2 years ago. So, and now there's talk of even more for 2 years from now in France. So that's wonderful. that's great, and I've had my own battle and struggle with what do you do with small f fame, or I say I'm pretend
Yeah.
famous,
Well,
which is
because
our local beach.
you're not driven by like that external validation.
No,
And
no,
it's almost
and
like
what?
uncomfortable. It's such an internal thing for you doing that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
even the way you describe not being kind of aggressive about it, like, ah, yeah,
yeah,
cough it
yeah,
up, like you're a gentle person by just by your nature, and you it's like peaceful warrior type of
yeah.
feel that
Well,
you
and part
have.
of that too is I'm fighting my natural illness, which is like, I don't know if we should share this, but the way I describe it to people that can't understand what mania is like,
Okay.
it's like my brain makes cocaine. It's like
Mhm.
and it's not chemically equivalent to that, but I've read online that there's, yeah, in terms of the spike you get from whatever chemicals the brain makes, that spike your mania, and then also the sort of drop off and the
Mhm.
withdrawal you get when that goes away, which is what depression is, and those dopamine and those other nice chemicals are not being produced, and you're yeah, being withdrawn from that, and it's not a lot of fun. But what I so that's my natural, where it's not hard for
Mhm.
me to spike that and go, yeah, So I fought that. So
Mhm.
I think I was telling you that I do extreme things in a balanced fashion. And that's what I
Yeah,
tried to do is I am approaching extreme goals or the limits of my abilities, but I'm doing it in a methodical, careful,
yeah,
step-by-step approach with
yeah,
people watching my back,
yeah. My
people telling me,
intention, yeah,
and to be able to say, I've only got 200 more meters to go for my 1600 meter swim for my qualifier, and the waves are getting higher, and your friend says, get out.
yeah,
And I'm going, it's only 200 more meters, but you listen to your friend and you put your feet down and you get out.
yeah. Because it's not difficult, almost like in that when your brain is used to going into that hyperdrive.
Yeah.
And I used to, um, like disappear into my work, like I would disappear, like I would have like a hyper nonstop, long days, long weeks, long years, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
being in or being working and then crashing, working and crashing. So I can identify with that it's I can do the intense, very
Yeah.
intense, highly hyper focus or high energy stuff, but then the crash is imminent in a way,
Yeah.
so it's learning how to take that ability and the need for that feel of that, extreme and going far, but do it. I was calling it for myself, do it gently.
Yes. Yeah.
And also catch myself when I go into that, like, oh, this is too much adrenaline. Slow down, like,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
slow down in terms of activity, but slow down in terms of the like the activation in my body, the
Yeah.
activation in
Absolutely.
my, you know,
Yeah.
and
Because, if you don't control that, you will not finish your endurance goal. Like, you cannot go into, an Ironman going, yeah, you save that for the end, maybe if you've got any of that left, but you cannot have your pedal all the way down to the floor when you're doing endurance sports. You've got to have that moderate pace. And yeah, and that's something I'm working at now in the pool, is to be even slower at the outset, and so that you still have that for the second half. Yeah. So
yeah, so I was just thinking we kind of coming almost to the end, and
yeah.
how do we want to wrap it up? What is being left unsaid so far, and you want to
Next
share?
goals. Next goals.
Next
Haven't covered
goals.
all
Let's
the
talk
next
about
goals. Yeah.
goals.
So yeah, so I'm now, as I said, I'm signed up for 40K in June. And I just paid the deposit, which is sizable, for doing swimming around Manhattan. So that's 42 kilometers. In some ways, it's easier than the lake swim because it's current assisted. So you wait for the tides to shift and push you up the East River, and then you try to wait for the right moment to transfer into the Harlem River, and then you get shot out of the cannon of the Hudson River back down to the Statue of Liberty. So, but yeah, it's the first of uh, you don't have to do it first, but it's one of the three triple crown swims of open water swimming. So what the triple crown swim is the Manhattan swim, or 20 bridges, they call it, because you go under 20 bridges. And then there's Catalina, which is swimming from Catalina Island at midnight when the sharks are all coming in with full bellies. So I've been told.
That's
And then
California, right?
huh?
That's
California, yeah.
yeah.
So you swim to LA, and there's a wicked current that is cold and is going along the coast that you have to fight, but it's good training. So that's a 32K swim, which is similar to the English Channel, which is the third part of the Triple Crown. So the problem is to swim the English Channel, so many people want to do it, you have to apply 3 years in advance. So there's a chance if you get an open spot, you could do it 2 years, but generally, so I should have applied last January for the English Channel because my intention is to do it in 2 years from now. So, but I was scared. And I hadn't done the 25K yet. So, it's like, and there's still a part of me that would like to hold back and do the 40K first and like Memphis Magog, and then maybe also do the Manhattan before I apply for Catalina and the Channel. But I just need to do it. And I was saying to myself last night, well, what's a reasonable thing, like number of unsuccessful attempts? And I was sort of saying, yeah, I need to think about that if I'm unsuccessful, say on this lake swim or on Manhattan, maybe once, if I'm unsuccessful and I go back, I get it the next time, that's okay. But if, say, I fail twice on the same thing, or I fail two in a row, yeah, maybe I need to be happy with swimming 25K, or whatever. But yeah, so I don't know. Like a friend said, can you do it? I have no idea. Let's find out.
Well, that worked for you so far. So let's
So
continue
far, so
then.
good. Yeah.
There is no ego. Like I feel like there's such a, and I don't want to, like we all have ego. It's not like we always have ego, but
Yeah.
because we need it. But it's like so you have such quiet ego. You go with
Yeah.
humility and just like let's show up. And your whole
Yeah.
story is just really about saying yes, showing up, and then showing up again, hanging out with the right people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I,
you giving back right now so much. And I find that probably keeps you also
that's
lit up.
important too. Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard it's excuse me. I've heard it said where, you should always be, reaching back and helping somebody get to where you are. You always receive the help of somebody ahead of you that's pulling you forward, and then it doesn't hurt to have somebody who's shoulder to shoulder with you where you're at right now. And if you do that for everything you're interested in, so if I'm swimming with somebody that hasn't done a lot of ice water swimming and I'm encouraging them to do it, and then there's somebody who does more ice swimming than I do that's bringing me forward, and there's a buddy that swims with me every day, that's amazing. That's community. Well, if I do that for every activity, or, I don't know a lot about financial stuff, or I'm playing instruments. If you do that for all your interests in your life, you're never alone, and that was one of the things. It's like a lot of people that lose a life partner, it's like you want to replace them, and early on I went, well, what if I just have a lot of low-key friends, not necessarily soulmate? And because then low-key friends come and go, and I found this too. You find somebody who swims with you every day, gosh, that's rare. That's almost as rare as a mentor. And you find somebody who will be a swim buddy and swim with you almost every day, that's huge. But again, that's not a marriage, and people's goals change, and then people move on. And I've been lucky enough to have like 3 or 4 different really good swim buddies. So and I also have a good walking buddy, and I had a hiking buddy, and so yeah, there you
You,
go.
you don't do it alone. Yeah, so I just wanted to mention too, because you mentioned Nadine a couple times, Nadine
Yeah.
Bennett, and I believe she has a website, Wild Big Swim. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, so I
Or
think that if
big
somebody
wild
wants,
swim or something like that. Yes. Yeah.
and
It's
for
a
you,
great blog. Sorry. Yeah, it's a great blog, Rita. She goes into a lot of details on things. She's very thorough on her research, but pull from it what you want, you know? It's like, yeah, it's a
yeah.
good
So I
resource.
just thought if
Yeah.
people want to like find out more, because you're on Facebook, and we also in Ottawa we have this the group, the what is it called, the Facebook group, ice something, now I'm forgetting.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
I host the Ice West End Ice Dippers or whatever,
okay,
but there's also Coldplay, which does a lot of dipping.
okay.
We see them every Saturday, and there's about 20 of them, and they're a little more structured, but they're very good at getting people from 0 to doing 2 minutes in the water, and they're a fun community as well. So. Yeah,
That's good.
there's
Yeah.
yeah, reach out. There's and again, it doesn't need to be swimming. It doesn't need to be walking. It doesn't, but find your joy, follow joy. Yeah, find your thing.
That's your main message. Find your
I
joy.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then just take small, what did you say? Start small, stay consistent,
Yeah, and build.
and build. Start small, stay consistent, and
Build.
build. That's amazing. So we will be checking in a couple of years, English channel or not, Manhattan, there's things to
It's scary as hell to put this out there. Like I worried about this when I said it to a reporter, and then everyone's like, "When have you done the English channel yet?" And it's like it takes 3 years. Like, give me
I know
time.
it puts that extra pressure, and you have to be, I know we have to be careful when we start broadcasting our goals, because then
Yeah,
it
yeah,
becomes, if we need to change them, or
yeah,
it's like, are we doing it for ourselves, or are we doing it
yeah,
because what other people gonna think of us?
yeah.
And or we already told, oh, they're gonna think didn't do it. So it's really keep that internal motivation, and keep, opinions of other people.
Yeah. Well, and again, Nadine has led me in that
Minimal.
direction where she's so open about, I'm doing this. It's an adventure. I don't know if I'll, you know, complete it or whatever. It's irrelevant. I'm going to learn things. And that's what she said to me is like, you're going to learn things and you'll apply things. And if you put it in that light rather than I'm sorry, I'll refer to Summer McIntosh, where she said, there was some world record she set, and she said, I'm not happy with the swim. And it's like, what? And it's like, because there were certain things she was focused on trying to achieve in that swim. And she
Mm,
didn't quite implement those techniques that she was trying to do. And so the time or the world records or the completion or non-completion or medals, that's irrelevant. It's you're working towards certain things. And I thought, wow, that's a cool approach. So I'm doing more of that now where I'm focused on being consistent with certain aspects of my technique or learning certain things about swimming in ocean or whatever. Yeah,
mhm.
you can't fail. You engage with something new, there is no failing.
You're always learning. You can't fail because you learn
Yeah,
something. It's if your
yeah,
whole goal is learning and discovering and seeing what if. It's like, well, okay, what if? Like, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Let's
And
just
the
see.
other side of that is the reason I encourage every day too is there's people that are instead looking for why they can't. And when people tell me they don't do a certain thing, I say, yet. If you, because you're closing the door, it's a mental door. If you're going, I don't do this, bam, that door gets shut. But if
Yeah.
you say, I haven't done it yet, then there's a chance, So,
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because I think it's part of that growth mindset. They even now teach it in schools, thank goodness, because
mhm.
my 12-year-old
Wow.
brought it to me. It's like,
Yeah.
she started saying, yet. I was like, where did you get it? Like, you
That's
know, and she's
great.
like, oh, it's, you know, it's growth mindset. I was like, okay, good.
Yeah.
And I like the phrase because I have to catch myself too. Oh, I can't do it because, you know, I'm busy with work or whatever else. I'm in Canada and I can't bike
Mm.
all year round or something else.
Mm.
And I was like, stop.
Yeah.
No, stop it. Because I heard the expression, if you argue for your limitations, you
Hmm.
will get to keep you will keep them. So
Absolutely.
stop
Absolutely.
arguing for your limitations. If
Yeah. Just say, yeah, if just say yes and see what happens. Yeah.
yeah. So let's see what happens. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.